Page 26, intervals, triads, and chord symbols. I'm going to take pages 26 and 27 in this lesson. Finally, they're introducing you to chords. I wish they'd have done this like last book. Okay, better late than never then, I guess. It really kind of helps if you can understand it. It's hard to explain why to someone. Why? What? But it helps, especially if you're reading about music or listening to somebody talk about music. They may refer to some of this stuff. At least you may have some idea what they're talking about. But if you can get the chords down, it makes reading music and playing music a little easier or a little less difficult, depending on which direction you're going. So let's just take this carefully, because all of these intervals, triads, and chord symbols and all that, they all tie together. Now we're going to use the key of C major. Going back to good old C major because it's only the white keys, no sharps or flats, so just C to C. We're going to use this as our starting example, although all the keys work the same way. All the key signatures work the same way. You can Google what an interval is and all that. To me, an interval is the distance between, or the space, or just whatever, between any two notes. Any two notes. It could be the first note of a piece and the last note of a piece. Doesn't matter where they are, but the distance between them is their interval. The space. They're numbered. And it's easy to figure it out because you simply count up in the scale. Count up in the scale. In C major, we're just white keys. So when we count up, we're just using white keys. So let's just say I have two notes here and here. They're both white keys. You notice? Okay. If I want to know the interval between them, I simply count up. Up. It is safer to count up, although in theory you could count either direction, but there's a point in dealing with intervals that if you go down, you get a different answer. So it's safer to just get in the habit of counting up if you can. Most of the time. I don't always do that because when you want the relative minor thing, I count down 3 because it's easier than counting up 6. But the point is, normally when figuring out intervals, we'll count up. The note I'm on is 1. We don't start with 0. Start with 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is an interval of a tenth. That's as complicated as we're going to get right now. We got different flavors of intervals. We'll do those later. We're just interested in the number. Figure out the number. They give the examples of intervals up there. If I go to here, the next note up on any white key, doesn't matter what it is. Well, it's 1, 2. It's an interval of a second. 1, 2. I counted up. A second. A second is next to each other. They sound lovely. A third, there's one note in between. So thirds are easy to tell because there's one note in between and they don't sound so harsh as a second. And a fourth is fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. An eighth is also known as an octave. Oct means 8. So an interval of an eighth. Sometimes we refer to octaves in music. A lot of times we refer to octaves in music, and it's simply an interval of an eighth. Letter to letter. G to G, it's an octave. D to D is an octave. E to E, blah, blah, blah. If I go G to up here to G, that's 2 octaves, because I got an octave here and an octave here. So that's 2 octaves. Okay. That's all we need to know about intervals for now. A triad, tri means 3. A triad is a 3-note chord, a chord that contains 3 notes. Let's keep it simple because we've got all kinds of stuff going on here. Let's just start here with C major. We're going to start with the bottom note of C. And the triad, the chord, is going to be every other note in the scale until you get 3 notes. So here, skip a note, skip a note, there. Every other note in the scale for 3 notes. That is known as a C chord. because when it's every other note, the bottom note identifies what the chord is. It's a C chord. If I invert it or turn it over, put the C on top here, you'll notice there's two notes here. Well, in this arrangement, the bottom note does not identify the chord because there's two notes here. It's still a C chord. So it doesn't matter what arrangement it is, as long as it's these note names, a C, an E, and a G, these note names anywhere, it's a C chord. If I do a G, an E, and a C, it's still a C chord because I use those note names, and I can condense this down or simplify it down to a simple here. That's what it is. And the inversions, they show them there in the middle in the quarter notes. They're doing it here, and then come up here, and then here. Yeah, whatever. You have root position, root. So when it's every other note, and the bottom note identifies the name of the chord. It's root position. If I turn it over or invert it, that's first inversion. If I do it again, that's second inversion. If I do it again, I'm back to root. Now if I go down, root, and I go down, put the G on the bottom, that's still second inversion. See, I don't call it first inversion because I went down once. No, the name applies to that pattern. And first inversion is here, where you got two notes between here, and second inversion is here, where I got two notes between these two. So this is second inversion because I got two notes. Just understand the inversion, because we say second inversion or third inversion or whatever it is. Now, hang in there, I'm just getting started. And you can come back and review this video. In a key, any key, I'm using C major here. All the notes in the key are numbered. We call them steps. Step number 1 or step 3 or step 4, whatever it is. And again, the first one is 1. We don't start with 0. So it's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because when I get to 8, that's 1 again. Because there's really only 7 different notes in it. There's steps. They're numbered. If I build a chord on that step, like here, it is that number chord. So if I build a chord on step 1, that is a 1 chord in the key of C. Remember, it has to be in the key of C because this chord in some other key would not be a 1 chord, it'd be some other number. In the key of C, that's a 1 chord. 2 chord, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a 1 chord again. Doesn't matter what the arrangement is. It could be inversions. I don't care. The point is, it's these note names. It's 1 chord. All right. Got that? They're numbered. They also have names. We'll come back to that later. My point is, we have a thing called primary chords. You see it toward the bottom of page 26. Primary chords. There are 3 primary chords in every key signature, and they're the same numbers in every key signature. They all work the same. It is the 1, the 4, and the 5. The 1, the 4, and the 5. 1, 4, 5. Those are the primary chords. Those are the chords that you're going to use the most. That means it's a chord built on that step. So the 1 chord is built on step 1. The 4 chord is built on step 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 5 chord is built on step 5. It's here. Those are the primary chords for C major. Okay. Just take another key. And the minors, by the way, work the same way. Major, minor scales. That tells you what notes are in that you're working with. Let's take G major. G major is 1 sharp here. All the white keys except the F's. F's are sharped here. Same difference. They're all numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when we work with them, we're working with these notes. So the 1 chord is here. It's a G chord because the bottom note identifies it when it's every other note. And then a 1, 2, 3, 4 That's our C chord again. It's a 4 chord in the key of G. It's a 1 chord in the key of C. Is this just funner or what? If you're not drinking, stick around. I'll get you there. And the 5 chord is one more. Remember, there's an F sharp in the key of G, so we got to use the F sharp. And those are the primary chords in the key of G. The 1 chord, the 5 chord, and the 4 chords, excuse me, and the 5 chord. All the keys work the same way. Now this book is calling these degrees. I said there's steps, step 1, 2, 3, 4. They're calling them degrees. Degree 1, 2. Call them anything you want. I don't care, but I think most people will call them steps. Guess it doesn't hurt to know both, know that they're called both, whatever, I don't care. They might say, what's the 4th degree of C major? And you think, 4th degree, are we dealing in temperature now? And what they mean is, what is the 4th step? What is the 4th note in the scale? 1, 2, 3, 4, it's an F. F is the 4th degree in C major. I call them steps, so it's the 4th step in C major. Whatever. Now, just because you're not confused enough, stick around. Bottom of page 26, they give you a little bit about the names. Back to C major. We already know they're all numbered, 1 through 7. Well, in addition to that, somebody in their infinite wisdom has decided to give them names. Gotta name everything, don't we? I wouldn't worry too much about them, but you're going to run across them. So at least for the primary chords, let's know the names of those 3. And if you want to learn the other 4 someday, that's fine. But for names, the 1 chord is also known as a tonic chord. Don't ask me why, I don't know and I don't care. It's tonic chord. You can look this up on your own. So the first step of a scale is also known as its tonic. The chord built on that step would also be known as a tonic chord. The root is the bottom note of the chord, not the key. The root of a C chord is a C, but it's not the root of the scale. The beginning note of a scale is called the tonic. So this chord can also be known as a tonic chord. So you can call it a 1 chord in the key of C or a tonic chord in the key of C. The 5th step, I skipped 4 for now, I'll come back to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th chord, or the 5 chord, I should say, not 5th, 5 chord, is also known as a dominant chord in the key of C. It's because the 5th step is a dominant, called the dominant. So we got tonic and dominant. And the chords built on those are tonic chord and dominant chord. The 4th step, this is called the subdominant. That's why I skipped it. You just come down 1. Dominant, subdominant. Just a little lows. So that's the subdominant step. The chord is the subdominant. So the primary chords in any key are the 1, 4, and the 5. Or the names would be tonic, subdominant, dominant. That's good enough for now. Now, on page 27, the chord symbols. We can use the letter names. For a C chord, it could be a C. Normally in music, you will see the chord name above the staff, not below the staff. If you look at a fake book is a book where they give you melodies only and the chords, and you have to make up the accompaniment yourself. You have to improvise. Or a guitar player can read the chord. They appear above the staff, is my point, and their letter names. So we have a C, and I might mention it will be a capital C, not lowercase c. Lowercase c is minor. If I want a C minor, I could use a lowercase c, although that's dangerous. But just remember we're using capital letters here. A C, and then an F, and a G, or whatever the chord names are. Now, on the 5 chord, or the dominant chord, Most of the time we will use what's known as a dominant 7 chord. It's simple enough. It's simply we want to add an interval of a seventh above the bottom note of the chord. Let's take a G chord. That's the dominant chord in the key of C. And I want to add a seventh above the G. G's the bottom note. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want to add an F. You notice it's also every other note. There's 4 notes here. Not a triad anymore. It's known as a 5-7 chord, because it's the 5 chord with the 7th added, or a dominant 7th chord, because it's the dominant chord with the 7th added. And in most of the time in music, you're going to see the 5 chord is actually a 5-7 chord. Not always, but most of the time. And they use a little seventh, a little superscript 7 there. Look toward the bottom of the page at the bass clef line with the chords, the half note chords. And in the second measure, the second one is a D7, the little 7. That's a D chord with 7th added. So it's a D chord. I'm not in the key of D major now. It's just a D chord with the 7th added. That D7 chord. I'm in the key of G major. And when you're doing this, you stick with the notes in that key. G major has an F sharp in it. Otherwise, we're using all white keys. So on this 5-7 chord, I got the G here, but with the C, it's a natural. In G major, it's a C natural. I'm using that. That is a slightly different thing. Let's don't go there right now. It's here. Well, in C major, it's here. Here. G7. A G7, or a dominant 7 in the key of C. It's a G7 all the time. The note name, according to the letter, is not dependent on key signature. It's always what it is. So if I say this is a G chord, it's always a G chord. It doesn't matter what the key signature is. But if I say it's a 1 chord, then that is based on the key signature. It's a 1 chord in the key of G. It's a 5 chord in the key of C. Is this funner or what? Just gets better and better, don't? So you get that. Now, you can also use the numbers for the chords. Could we 1 chord or 5 chord or 5-7 chord or whatever? Use the numbers. And if we use numbers, they're not showing it here, but for the numbers we use Roman numerals, because we got so many numbers in music. What do? Well, okay, let's add in the Roman numerals for fun. And those will always appear underneath the bottom staff. Roman numerals. And to use those, you got to know what key you're in, because they're in relation to the key you're in. But you'll see it occasionally. Now, one last thing, and then we'll go on. Back to C major. I don't want to be moving my hand around. Let's say C chord, F chord, G chord, or 1, 4, 5, 7, whatever. I don't want to move my hand around. So what I do is I simply use the inversions on some of them so I don't have to. So this 4 chord here, well, if I put the C on the bottom, that's close to this. All I did is come up. I'm here, just thumb come up. So I get the 1 and the 4 without moving the hand. And for the 5-7 chord, this, first off, I don't have to use all the notes. We don't have to use all the notes in a chord. We need the top and bottom, and I can use either one of the middle, whichever. Sometimes I use one, sometimes I use the other, whatever. So here I'm going to put the G on top. I'm going to leave out the D. Now I have a triad, a 3-note chord. So it's here, but that's close to a C chord. I'm not moving the hand. Another way of looking at the 5-7 chord is your hand position. The bottom note goes down a half step. Remember, half step's just next note down. And I'm using the top 2 notes in the position. So I can get all 4 of these notes without moving the hand. Should do it in both hands. We get the these same primary chords and the same pattern in every key. It really comes in handy, and you'll see them a lot in music. You'll get to the point where you just recognize it as one thing. You don't have to worry about the notes. Just, oh, it's a C chord, or it's a 5/7 chord, or whatever it is. You'll just learn to recognize them in time. Let me know if you have questions on this, although there's lots of videos that teach music theory and this kind of stuff, and I'm sure they get in a lot deeper than I did. I tried to keep it fairly simple because we can get in just one thing at a time. This is enough.